This is where business ideas and passions turn into profit. Whether you're dreaming of becoming your own boss but don't know how to get started, or have already started a side hustle and wish to grow it exponentially, your host, Victoria Wieck, can help you turn your passion-based business ideas into profit. Welcome to Million Dollar Passion. Here is your host, world-renowned jewelry designer and home shopping TV celebrity, Victoria Wieck.
Welcome to another episode of the Million Dollar Passion Podcast. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to share with you this week's lesson. It's about negotiating mastery, actually. So mastering how to negotiate or negotiating skills is one of the, I would say it's the least, I guess it's the most underestimated skill of all skills for business owners, especially for small business owners like ourselves. If you're a huge business, you usually have a legal department or you have access to, lawyers who specialize in your expertise. But if you're a small business owner, you don't even know how to go and find a lawyer who's actually understands your business. Because, most of the time your business is, it's got a very special niche. There are some really amazing things about your business that differentiates your business versus all the big corporations. So this is a skill I think it's a must have or must listen for everyone who's in business or who thinks about going into business. So here we go without further ado. So I just want to talk about, there was this myth, first of all, that when you start negotiating, you need to hire a lawyer to negotiate because you are not qualified to negotiate, or you think that your lawyer is going to do a better job. I have to tell you from my personal experience, that's one of the worst things you could do, because most lawyers are not trained as business people. They go to law school. They understand legalese, they understand courtrooms, they understand law books, but they don't understand your business. So half the time you are calling your lawyer to try to explain to the lawyer what your business is all about, and what you're trying to negotiate from the other side. And then half the time they don't know anything about the other side. So then they do all this homework and then they bill you on an hourly basis. So before they even get to the other side, you're looking at, $5,000-$10,000 bill. Sometimes they want you to sign a retainer, like $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, before they even start talking to you at all. So and even when you pay $5,000-$10,000 a month, if they actually get you the deal you want, if they actually get you in a position that you really are in a position of strength, so that all you got to do is run your business, that's a different story. Half the time they don't do that. Half the time they come back with a lukewarm version of what you wanted, or just a few things from the list that you wanted, and the rest of it the other side gets away with, because that most lawyers go with the road to least resistance. Okay, that's my personal experience. So having said that, let's think about all the do's and don'ts about negotiating. I'm very, very passionate about this because I've had to negotiate some of the biggest contracts in my industry. It's a jewelry specialty within the retail industry. And I've negotiated deals, in Japan, in England, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, in the US. They have to negotiate biggest contracts, of my life anyway, at HSN. And then now currently I'm at Shop HQ. I've done business with places like, Macy's, Saks, Fifth Avenue, Nordstrom's, Neiman Marcus, all those places. So every single one of them, you need to learn how to negotiate. And they were all different, by the way. Each company looks for very specific things. And this is what we're going to talk about here. So number one, here are some of the do's. And we're going to get into the don'ts as well. The do's is start treating the person on the other side as your business partner. Okay. So, and I know it goes kind of contrary to what you think. So for example, First of all, let's think about negotiating. What are we negotiating? For example, if you own a physical store, you're negotiating rents with your landlord. You're negotiating maybe hotel rooms, for your employees when you're doing a lot of traveling. Maybe even airline tickets. If you got 10 employees, even 5 employees traveling, on a quarterly basis, you can actually negotiate with an airline. I don't know if you knew that or not. Employees, you're negotiating your employees' compensation. If you're an employer, same thing. You're negotiating with employee, all that suppliers, your customers, outside consultants. All these require some sort of a negotiation. And what I'm looking for is, what I want you to understand is, we talk about the win-win, but I want to talk about the win-win-win situation. So there are 3 wins, and there are usually 3 parties involved. They're not just 2 parties. Okay. So let's go to, some of the examples. Like, for example, if you're an employee and you want the highest paid, you want to get paid pretty high. So let's say this is very typical in a retail or a wholesale type of a business, a manufacturer, for example. So, you might want to pay them a salary plus some sort of a bonus, right? Or some sort of a commission above a certain amount of, retail that they're business that they're doing. So say you say, you know what, I want to get paid, $150,000 base salary plus all the travel, plus all the expenses, hotel room, my meals, everything paid. And I want to get paid, let's say 10% from everything I generate above, let's say $1 million. That sounds really good for the employee. Especially if you can bring in, $10-20 million worth of business to them. You're making a couple $100,000 over and above your $150,000 base salary, plus all your expenses paid. That sounds really good for it. But the problem is, the employer, this is an expense to the employer. When they actually bake that into the price, so instead of, 150, somebody who's getting paid $150,000, now you got somebody who could make $250,000, right? That's coming out of their pocket. They're going to price that into ultimately their price. So what happens is, this employee goes, let's say, like, I'm going to get something very concrete. Let's say I have a necklace. I don't have a necklace on me right now, but let's say I've got a necklace, and that you're trying to sell, let's say 50,000, pieces of it to a department store or a TV station. And your cost is $50. And you want to sell it to the station for, let's say, $75 to cover for your rent, to employees. And remember, you have more than just that employee. You've got a secretary, you might have a receptionist, you might have a warehousing, people. You've got to pay for all of their insurance and, health insurance and everything else. So let's say, 25%, $25 margin for that. And you also have defects and all the other stuff that comes back. So you want to get that. And when you do that, $75, let's say this is what you want. But if you've got an employee who demands $150,000 plus the 10%, well, 10% of $75 is already $750, right? So your margin gets shrunk by quite a bit. So since you really need the $25 margin to actually pay for everyone else that, in your space, in your company, you're going to bump that price up to, let's say, $95, at least $85 for sure. What happens is, even if the customer buys it from you, the actual retail price on that, instead of going at $150, it's going to go at $185, something like that. So now it has to sell at the store for a much higher price. So again, I went about it in a very long ways, but at some point you need to kind of make it so that your end user, the consumer, wins, because the end user, the consumer who actually buys your stuff and uses it, always knows where to get the best buy. They always know where they can actually count on high quality products at the lowest cost prices, right? So they determine in the end where they shop. And let's say what happens is, even if you got a willing partner, let's say you're dealing with a department store, A, this department store, even if somebody is, friends with you and they say, that sounds pretty reasonable. If a lot of end users don't end up buying it from department store A. They're going to be stuck with all this data inventory as a direct result of just this one example. And then what they do is, since they're going to get fired until they get rid of this, merchandise, they either put it on extreme sale, or they call you, the manufacturer, and say, hey, I need some help. I need you to take this back because I can't buy anything else. I'm overbought. I can't buy anything else. My boss won't give me any more money to buy anything until I clear this inventory out. So at the least, they will not buy from you again, okay? Because they got burnt. So what I'm saying to you is that treat the other party as your partner. You need to make sure that whatever you sell them, you do whatever you can to make sure that that stuff actually sells once they buy it. Okay, that's your responsibility. It is their responsibility, but it's your responsibility too. Second thing here is, and I can't stress this, enough. You got to do homework. Always, always, always homework. If you've listened to this whole series, you hear me say this every week. If you basically understand what the other side wants, what they need from you, okay, what they want from you in the end, and what they will negotiate and what they won't negotiate. It's, if you're dealing with public companies, let's say you're dealing with, Macy's, Nordstrom's, TV stations, they usually have these earnings calls. Just call up their investment department and get their prospectus. If you want to buy one single share of stock, you should look at their perspective, and they actually will tell you what their goals are, what they excel at, what their challenges are, what they expect. All right. So let's say you're selling candles, and they say that, our goal this year is to increase our home. Let's say you're dealing with a TV station, increase our, a soft home. Candles would be considered soft home, meaning they're not, vacuum cleaners, computers that would be called hard home. Okay. But soft, like linens, candles, these things would go into all the softer areas of your home. So let's say you look at there and they say, we see a huge opportunity in soft home. And TV stations really don't do candles too well, just because they can't smell it, and there's all kinds of reasons for it. But let's say you see that in the prospectus saying, they're telling other investors that we are going to focus on soft home, which is where this falls in. So when you start to negotiate with them, you understand that you have something they actually want, right? Something that they are actively looking for. So you've got a much better position than if you're looking at the prospectus and they say, we tried soft home last, week, and that's where we actually took a huge margin hit, and it's really tough, but, we're going to stay, we're going to trim down, the soft home area, specifically things that we can't smell, like candles, fragrances, whatever. You're not in a position of strength at that point. So you got to figure out, do your homework, because, we all have very limited amount of time. Your customers have very limited amount of time. So when you do your homework, why try to swim uphill? Why try to go to a place where they just took a huge hit on margins and they're trying to clear out what they already have, right? You want to go to places where they're actually looking for your type of product. That's first thing. Second thing is, they also will tell you who they want. If you listen to QVC, HSN, their earnings call every quarter. And by the way, that's all public information. You can just type in Google earnings call every quarter, and quarter meaning like they follow the calendar year. So usually first quarter is some earnings call for first quarter sometime in April or May, because they got to finish until March 31st. They do all their books, and then they actually have calls in front of their stockholders and Wall Street. So every quarter, you can see the second quarter ends June 30th, and their earnings call is about, mid-July, early August, and it goes on. So at their earnings call, and everything is recorded and published. So they're legal, statements. So they actually will tell you the truth, what they did well with, what they don't do well with, so, they constantly talk about getting new customers, right? New customers is a huge thing for all Wall Street type of environment. They want to get new customers, and specifically, they want to get younger customers because millennials are gonna they have a much longer span to buy from you once they become your customer, and there are more of them. Millennials today are the number one buying block. So when they tell you what they want, for example, where customers are, millennials and blah, blah, blah. If you're selling candles and you say, you know what, we've tested, all these scents and, millennials really like things that are natural, fresh, and, we really focused on that. They listen. The buyers are trained to listen, right? So again, do your homework. They will tell you everything you need to know before you ever set in your foot in the door. These are the things that your lawyer won't do. They don't know. I mean, it's not their job to know. It's their job to know law. It's not their job to do market research on the type of products that you're doing. So going back to my original, conversation about hiring lawyers, when, there is room for lawyers to come in once you actually finish your negotiating, they can put it into the legalese. Okay. That's when you use the law. Let's see. And then what's really important is at the end of the whole thing, you really do need to get away with from this meeting what you need out of it, right? As a small business, what you need to survive and grow and make a profit. So you need to write a list of things that are non-negotiable for you, right? For example, I mean, what's non-negotiable for me would be to go and do a ton of business with somebody only to lose money or have the potential to lose money. Okay. That's not good. So make a list of things that you are not willing to negotiate with. Okay. Because you have to understand what they are. You don't want to go sort of like, well, let me go and see. I'm going to kind of feel it out. You can feel out a lot of other things, but you need to have some non-negotiables. One of those things for me, when I was negotiating my contracts, was I initially, when I first went to HSN, and I'm going to say this because it was the most recent big contract I've had to really negotiate, meaning that by the time I got to the second network, the framework for what I wanted from a TV network was already done. So with HSN, both them and myself, we had to kind of chart new waters because they had never done a contract like mine before. And there's a whole long story as to why that is. But so, we were sort of both trying, what I was really proud of with them was that the people that I negotiated with, most of them are not there anymore because, that was 20 years ago. And then the contract kept renewing. But we negotiated with the idea that we were partners. They were very, very interested in making sure that I succeeded on their network. And I was very interested in making sure that they succeeded as a network, even if that involves them bringing in my competitors, them launching new brands that are similar to mine, because I really wanted to make sure that they could pay their bills, that they can continue to grow, because the bigger the umbrella, the more people can succeed, right? So what I want to say is that when it comes to, things like return rates, actual pricing, delivery dates. But I was willing to negotiate all of those. But what I wasn't willing to negotiate was how much time they get to have from me. I was a brand new mom of 2 children. My second child was born it was probably within a few months after I had my second baby. So as a new mom, I had some, plus I had my parents who still didn't speak English, and I really needed to be with them. And I had my grandmother who was in her late 90s. I'm the firstborn, and I just had a lot of responsibilities. And remember, I started my business to spend more time with my family. So my first instinct was, you get to have me like 8 times a year, because that required me to actually get on a plane and travel. So, and it worked out fine, but many of you might want to have, a lot more time, but I didn't want that in the beginning. It's evolved, later on to different sort of thing, but make sure that you understand what your non-negotiables are. Return rate, same thing. You don't want an open-ended return rate. Yes, you want them to succeed. You want them to be able to return some things to you, especially if it's defective and not, but whatnot. But what you don't want to do is say, hey, you can, if it doesn't sell, you can return everything, because what happens is then the buyer buys everything because there's no cost for them to actually, make a bad decision. If you give them a reasonable amount of return rate, okay, so that if something doesn't sell, you're giving them a little bit of safety net, but they then also have to work really hard to make sure that that merchandise gets, cleaned out pretty quickly so that you can keep buying them. So every decision is sort of a partnership type thing. So figure out what's non-negotiable for you. Also figure out what is non-negotiable for them. A lot of times, like if you're working with a TV station, they don't want to negotiate air times with you. They don't want to say, Victoria or, Brandon or anybody can come in and have prime time hours, because that's all they have. I mean, that is the most precious asset they have is prime time airtime. So they don't want to negotiate that with you. That's a non-negotiable for most networks. I'm not going to say all, because I haven't done business with all 40 networks around the world, but my experience with the ones that I've dealt with, the major ones, they don't want to say, you know what, you get to have 9 to 11 prime time, once a month. They don't want to do that, because they do 80% of their business at prime times. So understand what they don't want to negotiate with, okay? And kind of work with it, because if you do all this homework and you come to the table with what you are willing to give, what you're not willing to give, understanding what they're, understanding before you even walk in the door, what they are not going to negotiate with. You may use it to sort of negotiate other things, but understand that that's not something they're going to ever negotiate with. So, every business, and I've done business with, department stores. I've done business with Macy's, Nordstrom's, Saks, and Neiman's. They all have different requirements. They all have different margin requirements. They all have different return rates. So it's really, can you imagine if you hired a lawyer to find out what those are before? It would be just incredibly costly for you to just do. These are simple things you can find out just by doing some research. Talk to other people, network with other people, listen to their earnings calls. You call up the buyer before you actually, get in the a room with them negotiating. So homework is really, really important. And then the other thing that I want to say is what's really important for you to understand more than anything is, what does the end user, your final customer, the customer that actually buys your products, really want from their buying experience? Because if they're the type of people that's going to only pay, let's say, for candles, for example, if the going rate out there for 8-ounce candles is, $15, and yours is really, really special, you want to charge 25 or 30, fine. But if you want to charge 300, you understand it's, you got some big obstacles. You have to kind of, and I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm saying that if you're going to go out that way, make sure that you understand what the end user wants, because if they don't buy it, they don't respond to, they're not as passionate about spending $300 on an 8-ounce candle. And I understand I'm using some extreme examples. It's going to all come back to you. It's going to end up with a lot of problems for your partner, for your the business that you're trying to sell to, and for you as well, because their problems become your problems. They don't want to, they have usually 30 to 60 days to pay you, and they can play all kinds of games, believe it or not. You should really read those contracts, the purchase orders, before you get in that realm. Anyway, I hope this was really helpful to you. I covered a lot of ground here, so I would suggest that you go back, rewind, and listen to it again. And please make sure you share this episode with at least one friend. That's how we can grow grow my audience, and also how we grow as a community. And please, review this episode if you have a little bit of time. That's how we get judged by the podcasting industry. And again, thank you so much for listening. Please have a safe and happy week. And I hope you make great choices. Remember, happiness is a choice. Thank you. Until next time.
You've been listening to $1 Million Passion, where we turn dreams into reality and passion into profit. According to ancient Chinese proverb, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Congratulations on taking that first step today. For more information on how Victoria can help you turn your business idea into $1 million and to download Victoria's free ebook on passion-based business ideas, visit milliondollarpassion.com. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast player.